The only time he has been constrained is through the left and liberals banding together and going through the court system and public pressure. That's it. That's all we've seen in this administration. The other question is how do you...
I don't understand why he's turning his head like that. Do you genuinely believe that there's been any amount of political change in Trump 2.0 that was driven by the right? Is there any amount of pushback that was driven by the populist right against Donald Trump 2.0? These are all coming from the left. The idea that any of this is coming from the populist right is fucking insane. Especially when, like I said, the only thing that I can remember that the right stood up on Trump against in any regard was the tariffs. And that was the establishment Republicans. Those weren't even the populist ones. And because I wasn't recording, I'm going to repeat that sentence that I just said. I'd chat with you, but I'm welding on night shift, so I'm tagged out. That's fine. The last time that I watched a Cenk video, I got a fuck ton of views, but I did not have fun. He makes me very upset. I feel like I might be a little more amendable to his position now, after some time to really adjust to it and think about it. Who knows though, because last time I watched it, I was really pissy. So we'll just have to see, I guess. Okay. It's 41 minutes, so I don't know if I'm going to watch the whole thing tonight, but...
It's Fantasyland. That Trump was like, oh, the left thinks Abrego Garcia, I've treated him wrong. I surrender, left.
The only time he has been constrained is through the left and liberals banding together and going through the court system and public pressure. That's it. That's all we've seen.
Is MAGA a fascist movement? Just give me a yes or no.
That's an absurd framing, Kyle. That's mainstream media framing.
You can't say that MAGA is fascist. Wait. You really don't believe MAGA is fascist?
I am against Trump, totally, okay? But why do you love Trump will be the next question. Okay.
Did I ask that? Jake, talk about a straw man. I mean, you're making up stuff I never said. Come
What's the point of coming out here if I can't answer your
Jake,
questions?
I'm giving you plenty of time to answer, brother. You're making up stuff about me. I didn't say that.
Okay,
So you want to talk about straw men? You're inventing
it's a
things on the
mistake talking to you guys. It's a mistake.
Oh boy.
Welcome, Cenk Uyger, the Young Turks.
I'm glad that, so I feel like this might be a little cathartic, because I remember the last time that Cenk talked to, I think it was Brian Tyler Cohen, and I think it was, what was the other one that I watched? Brian Tyler Cohen was the one that I watched, and, oh, fuck. I don't remember who the other conversation was with. Last time I watched it, I felt like both of them treated him with relative kid gloves, which really pissed me off. But I feel like Kyle Kulinski is one of the only people that just absolutely never pulls punches, which I both respect and pisses me off whenever we disagree on something. But here I have a feeling that we're going to be very amenable to Kyle Kulinski, the GOAT. So I don't know, I guess we'll see. But I feel like this might be kind of cathartic.
So we appreciate you joining us.
No problem. Thanks for having me.
So oh, you want to explain? Go ahead.
Yeah, so I was just going to say, Cenk reached out to Kyle and I this week and said, hey, I think we got some things to talk through. Can I, let's have a conversation. So we said, sure, let's do that. And this kind of follows on the heels of a discussion/debate that you and I had back in December, where, the launching point, and you can, correct me if you don't think that this is a fair characterization of this conversation, but the launching point was a tweet that you had put out expressing some optimism about the Trump administration. So we can put that tweet up on the screen from Cenk to refresh everybody's memory about where we started. So you said, in November 29, 2024, I've been trying to figure out why I'm more optimistic now than I was before the election. Even though I was so against the guy who won, I know now MAGA is not my mortal enemy, neither is the extreme left. My mortal enemy is the establishment, and they have been defeated. So over the course of that conversation, you explained to me that the reason you felt optimistic was really two reasons. Number one, as you say there, the establishment was defeated. And number two, you felt that the elements of the populist right and the bros would hold Trump accountable. And it kind of built to this crescendo where it actually turned...
Also, just to be clear, I'm kind of at the point where I'm not even... the last couple of times I watched the Cenk Uyger video, I feel like I was just not very open with where I'm at. I just kind of criticized him from where his world is. I feel like a lot of the populist rhetoric and the anti-establishment rhetoric usually just relies on people not really understanding. And that's why when you see most people who are super anti-establishment, like Kyle Kulinski, like Cenk Uyger, like Alex Jones, I know that they would probably hate to be lumped into that group, but the people who are super populist anti-establishment people just generally aren't very specific about their claims, and so they give absolutely nothing to back their claims or no details about their claims because Ultimately, most of the fear mongering about the establishment is probably things that the people want to be there. So I've been I'm kind of less charitable to the hyper anti-establishment viewing. But even I still stand by, even if you're a super anti-establishment person, you would probably throw up in your mouth at the idea of electing somebody like Donald Trump, somebody who, pardoned Paul Manafort for lobbying his campaign on behalf of Viktor Yanukovych. It's probably not something that a lot of anti-establishment people would be super in favor of, or appointing the one dude from the Heritage Foundation to the to the OMB. Probably not like the most anti-establishment that you've ever heard of. The appointment of Marco Rubio to the Secretary of State. Like, if you're anti-establishment, I can't imagine that you're happy with the Trump administration, at least in a genuine way. I mean, if you're Rob Noor, I guess you probably are, but yeah, I don't know. So I guess we'll see where that goes.
To the camera and said, listen, guys, in a little while, you're going to be able to say whether...
All right, debate idea, gay son or thought daughter. I want my child that I'm not interested in having to be as happy as possible. But if I had a gay son, there's probably less chance of impropriety, just because there's probably less chance of a wide net of sexual partners. So I'd probably prefer a gay son. But hey, as long as my kid's happy and safe, that's all I care about.
I was right or whether Crystal was right. Let's go ahead and play that portion as a refresher. That is element number 2.
I want to address something to those.
Yeah,
Can I?
sure.
Is this my camera here? Okay, yeah. So right-wing populists, it is now your job to prove Crystal wrong. Okay.
Go out and do it, y'all.
So she doesn't believe you. And by the way, almost no one on the left, other than me and Anna, believe you guys that you actually want to cut the Pentagon. And that you could pressure Elon Musk and Donald Trump to cut the Pentagon. So are you going to prove the left wrong, or are you going to prove them spectacularly right? Am I going to have to come on here and apologize to Crystal for ever believing in any right-wing populist and say, oh, I was a sucker, those guys are liars. All they want to do was increase the Pentagon, have more wars, more corruption, and they never held Trump accountable. We waited 4 long years for that.
I don't know what his stance on the Iran stuff is. I'd imagine, since I'm pretty sure the Young Turks are still pretty anti-Israel, that they're probably not the biggest fan of the prospect of attacking Iran, but I wonder how that plays into everything. Personally, I believe democracy requires populism of a type. Self-government has to reassert itself from time to time, but it has to be pluralistic democratic movement. Yeah, obviously, when I say populism, I don't necessarily just mean popular support for a policy. Obviously, that has its place in American democracy, but just the way that it shows up now. A reform anti-corruption movement would be a type like Ukraine or Chile recently, for example. Yeah, sure. I mean, like, whenever I say against the establishment, I'm not just like literally a fucking puppet shill that says that there's no problems with the establishment and that there's no corruption in the federal government. I'm never going to say that. But like the kind of things that a lot of populists talk about just explore vague generalities because they have no ability to actually go in depth on any of the particular things that they're criticizing, unless it's the like military industrial complex.
For them to hold him accountable, and all they did was kiss his ass and show that they don't really believe in freedom. They said all this stuff about freedom, but they never meant it. They said all this stuff about drain the swamp, but they never meant it.
Also, I really, really hope drain the swamp. Oh my God. Okay. Kill me. Drain the swamp just means firing a bunch of federal workers. Pretty bad. Everybody kind of agrees that that's pretty bad. Or just replacing partisan hacks with different partisan hacks that are Republican. Probably bad. I think we could all probably agree on that. But when it comes to like cutting the Pentagon, sure, we could probably all agree to cut defense spending or things like that. I'm pretty sure Doge did literally absolutely nothing in that regard. I don't know what the cope looks like there because I'm sure there's going to be plenty because of how heated this gets. I don't know what the cope for Elon doing absolutely nothing about almost any fraud, waste, or abuse looks like. Unless he does think Doge was somehow effective, in which case I would love to hear that argument too. He's very much so against Israel's actions. Yeah, I know. But I don't know where he stands on Iran specifically. I mean, I'm sure he's against the war. I just don't know how that plays into how we can get back to dick-sucking Trump.
They said all this anti-war stuff, but they never meant it. We're going to come back on here in 1 year, 2 years, 4 years, and we're going to keep doing a check.
So, Cenk, that was kind of the context of that discussion. And just for the audience and for you, since there's two of us and one of you, and we don't want to be like jumping on all over each other, and maybe Cal and I have disagreements on things, I thought I would kind of handle the first 30 minutes more or less. Cal would handle the second 30 minutes. You've got an engagement you've got to go to, hard out in an hour, so that's the amount of time
We
that we
could do
have.
this for 4 hours if we had the time.
I'm sure we could, and it would be painful for all involved. But in any case, we've got a hard out for Cenk in 1 hour. We want to be very respectful of his time. So, with everything that's happened in Trump 2.0, do you still feel that that original optimism that you expressed at the time, do you still feel that that was well-founded?
Please say yes.
Absolutely. And the part of the reason I wanted to come on is to see if you guys are on planet Earth or live in an alternate reality. And I'm not trying to be insulting. I'm trying to figure it out. I'm being genuine about it. And Chris, I went back and watched our conversation from back then.
Yeah,
and
me too.
yeah, you kept saying like things against Trump. And that's why I didn't even think it was a debate. It was a discussion because I was like, yeah, I totally agree with you on Trump and the Republicans, et cetera. I was talking about the populist right and the independents that voted for Trump, the actual voters. And you saw it in that clip. I don't address Trump. I don't address any Republicans. I address the voters. So what has happened since then? Joe Rogan has come out against what Trump has done with Mahmoud Halil, with Abrego Garcia. Almost all of the MAGA hosts have come out against the war, ranging from Tucker Carlson, Steve Bannon. Then you've got politicians like Marjorie Taylor Greene. You've got Tim Dillon. I'm not sure you can name a right-wing MAGA host or independent host that's for the war in Iran. So I'm genuinely curious. Like, are you guys not seeing that?
So, okay. He does kind of have a point. I think it's interesting that he pointed out like, oh, you had Joe Rogan condemn what happened with Mahmoud Khalil, and then that's the only name that he listed on that one. I think that's kind of silly. But when it comes to like, you know, the super populist right calling out the war with Iran, the two things that I would say is that I would have to see. I don't know if I'd have to see. I guess you could maybe give them a point for kind of half disagreeing with Trump in regard to going to war with Iran. But at the same time, I don't know if it's even been demonstrated that they're going to meaningfully part with Donald Trump on the war with Iran, because we're not at war with Iran yet. We haven't done any actual action. So for them to come out and say, yeah, I would theoretically be against entering this war, we'll see how quickly, or if it doesn't, then, you know, I'll admit that I'm wrong. But once Trump actually does, or if Trump actually does take action against Iran, do you think we're going to see people like Marjorie Taylor Greene shift? I don't think we're going to see people like Tucker Carlson shift, because he's absolutely a Putin fucking cocklicker, and Iran is a Russian ally, so they're never going to be in favor of U.S. interventionism with any of Russia's allies. So Tucker Carlson doesn't shock me. But do you think people like Marjorie Taylor Greene are going to meaningfully part from the president when it comes to waging war with Iran, or do you think they're probably gonna, in the long term, end up coalescing to Donald Trump whenever he does inevitably get involved in the Iran war? I don't know. We'll have to see. I will say that I was pleasantly surprised with the amount of MAGA people that I saw coming out against the war with Iran, but that's something that just has to remain to be seen. But I don't know if this shows like a meaningful part from Donald Trump when it comes to, you know, disagreeing with a hypothetical invasion, or disagreeing with a hypothetical involvement that hasn't actually come to fruition, in which the Trump administration is remaining very tactically quiet.
Or does that somehow magically not?
But also, sorry, I'm going to be pausing a lot. I will say that I will give credit to a lot of the MAGA base for kind of adhering to their populism. I have noticed that they've been calling out Donald Trump on a lot of the stuff when it comes to foreign interventionism, or when it comes to, there was another big thing that they partnered up with him on recently. Fuck, I don't remember. There was another big thing that a lot of the MAGA base was kind of separating from Trump on, which did kind of make me happy, and it did kind of reinforce Cenk's point, if I'm being honest. So, I mean, I guess I think this remains to be seen yet, though. I don't know if you can really call this a slam dunk for Cenk. But, I mean, you can't really call it a slam dunk for Crystal either.
Yeah.
So, Cenk, I have the same question as to whether or not you're on planet Earth. Because, first of all, let me ask you this question. Do you think that Trump 2.0 is better or worse than Trump 1.0?
Trump is irrelevant.
No, he's not irrelevant, because I'll tell you why. Here's why. You expressed optimism about how all this would go. And the reason you were optimistic
No, you're
is because, hold on.
misunderstanding.
No, we just saw your tweet, okay? The reason you were
Yeah,
optimistic
I can explain the tweet.
is because you thought these various groups and influencers would hold him accountable. So did they constrain his behavior, for example, when Elon Musk was running around with a chainsaw, slashing Social Security and gutting the federal government and gutting the CFPB? No, we didn't. In fact, we saw Joe Rogan host Elon Musk.
I think, yeah, this is going to be another, this is a really good question. Because even if we grant, okay, Cenk is just really, really optimistic about the, which you're kind of ceding a lot of ground, but if we grant, like, yeah, Cenk is really optimistic about not Donald Trump's presidency, but the populist turn that he's seeing in the right and the relative authenticity of this populist turn. I think what Crystal's kind of getting at, it's like, okay, even if we grant that we have like a really, really distinctive populist turn in the right-wing voter base, what the fuck does that matter if they have no political efficaciousness at all? Like, what does it matter that the base is ultimately more populist right when they're going to vote for the same exact people who are easily like a wolf in sheep's clothing when it comes to populist rhetoric and then establishment Republican action? Whenever like so-called populist right-wing people are voting for people like Donald Trump, you can say that you believe in their heart that they're populists anyway, and that might be true, but they also might just be fucking stupid, and they might just be voting for a complete Trojan horse of a candidate that has actually no populist aims in mind, which is probably the case for Donald Trump.
Not to mention Mark Zuckerberg and Mark Andreessen to make the case for those things, okay? No accountability there. Did we see them constrain his behavior and hold him accountable when he launched a crypto shitcoin, the most corrupt scheme in American history, most likely? No, he did it. He's faced no accountability for that. You mentioned some dissent from Rogan on the kidnapping of college students off of college campuses. Is it the right that organized in opposition to that? No, it's the left and it's liberals.
That's also true.
The only time that Trump's actions have been constrained at all.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. Oh my God. Wait. Yeah. Yeah. Notice that like the. Sorry, I have cats. There was a lot of hair. Notice that when he's talking about like the populist right holding their leaders accountable, he's talking about Joe Rogan going on a podcast and saying that that was probably bad. Whereas like the action, like the actual real pushback against Donald Trump is coming from the left. That's absolutely true. The idea that Joe Rogan going on his podcast and saying like, yeah, maybe the Mahmoud Khalil thing might have been like kind of bad. The idea that that was the thing that organized all of the people to fucking protest Mahmoud Khalil's detention is silly. I think the Iran conversation is missing our moment in history and missing the unique danger of Trump exercising open war on the global stage, the way it is discussed, I mean to say. I need you to expound upon that a little bit.
In this Trump 2.0 era, which is vastly worse than I even expected when you and I had that conversation. I mean, we've got men in hundreds of people in a concentration camp. I didn't see any accountability from the right on that. I don't see any accountability from the right on an American city that is right now under invasion by our own troops, Marines on the ground in the city of LA. No, I don't see any accountability there. I see an administration that, as I predicted, the guardrails are completely off. And the only places where he has been constrained at all is when the left and liberals organized against Elon Musk, Tesla protests, showing up at town halls, etc., made him toxic. He had to be turfed out of the administration. And in the context of Kilmar Abrego Garcia, when you had mass left liberal resistance, even pushing Democratic leaders who were lame and weak to do something, Chris Van Hollen goes down to El Salvador, and the administration did something they did not want to do, which was to bring him back.
I don't know why he's shaking his head at this. Like, this is, like, these are not even opinions. Like, it is objectively the case, unless he's genuinely going to say that the right was the one mobilizing against these things. All of the pushback against the administration has absolutely been from the left. Just because you have, like, tacit callouts from Marjorie Taylor Greene saying, I didn't know this provision was in the bill that I voted for, or Joe Rogan saying that a fucking black bag detention might have been bad, just because you have those like absolutely tacit condemnations, that doesn't mean that the right has meaningfully pushed back against any of this.
That is the only time this administration has been constrained. It has had nothing to do with the right, had everything to do with liberals and the left organizing against him.
Yeah, that's hilarious. So you asked about 12 questions. I would love the time to answer it, but you didn't actually answer my question. Do you see a massive MAGA revolt against the war? And I'm being genuine. It's a literal question. Or do you just not see it?
Cenk, here's what I can tell you. Okay, Charlie Kirk.
The problem is that I feel like I honestly can't tell if Cenk is dishonest. I flip back and forth on it. The problem is what we're going to be quantifying as a massive pushback. Like, if by a massive pushback you mean big names have spoken against it, then yeah, there probably has been a massive pushback against this. But if by massive pushback you mean like protests, or you mean like actual real condemnations of Donald Trump, or any real political consequences for the Trump administration for this, absolutely not. Everything that's happened to the Trump administration from the right has been tacit and toothless. Every single thing, except for maybe the one actual substantive pushback that I remember from the right on Donald Trump was the establishment that was pushing back against his tariff authority. Aside from that, I don't recall any meaningful pushback from anybody on the right against Donald Trump.
Your buddy? He has already.
Not my buddy.
He has
Crystal,
already gone. He has
That's
already
a ridiculous
gone.
thing to say.
He's
Go
already
ahead,
gone
finish
from. He's already gone from being critical of the Iran war to guess what? He got a call from the White House, and now what he's saying? What's he saying? Oh, I trust Trump. Trump is the man for this moment. I know he's going to make the right decision.
The exact
Steve
quote
Bannon.
is,
Go
can I
ahead.
give the exact quote?
Yeah.
This is from Charlie Kirk. Quote, "We must trust Trump in this situation." Go ahead with Steve Bannon.
So
Steve
you're not
Bannon.
seeing
Hold
it.
on, let me.
Full
Steve
and
Bannon.
complete
Put up
Trump
element number 4.
trusted
This is the
Trump.
Financial Times today. Steve Bannon says, if the president, as commander-in-chief, makes a decision to do this, the MAGA movement, the Marjorie Taylor
I
Greene,
feel like there's some pushback, but in the end, the State Department's manufactured consent, the MAGA movement is going to fall rank and file. I mean, what kind of pushback are we even talking about? Like, again, I feel like most of the pushback has just been like totally toothless, tacit condemnations that don't mean anything. Some on the center left justifying moves to act against Iran kinetically, and they are not wrong necessarily, but we should not let Trump uniquely as a narcissist exercise that power unilaterally. If by some on the center left you mean Destiny, I think that's the only person on the center left that I've seen justifying the action against Iran, or Ethan Klein maybe. I'd have to think about it, because it kind of comes back to this argument that I had with FanFX. I've kind of become more charitable to him in regard to the thing about like Donald Trump being an egomaniac, so us like actually trying to hold legitimate power to the president and like actually trying to handcuff his ability as president instead of just handcuffing his illegal acts as president. I don't know.
At Gates's, we will fight it up till the end. But if he has more intelligence and makes that case to the American people, the MAGA movement will support President Trump. When Trump says that he gets to define what America first is, he's right about that. And so when you have Bannon, who also was critical of Elon Musk originally and got a call from the White House and said, cut it out, and he bent the knee, these people time and time again, Cenk, all they do is ultimately when Trump makes a decision, they bend the knee. We are already far enough into this administration.
Which is, by the way, what I was kind of hitting at, is that like it's one thing to come out and give a tacit condemnation while there's plans of conceptually maybe a war in Iran, as compared to we're at war with Iran. Like there's a very different circumstances. And I could see certain people trying to push Donald Trump away from that policy conclusion, but ultimately agreeing with him in the end if that's the decision that he makes.
To know there has been no constraint on his action that has come from the right, none, and we're in a war with Iran. We are already in a war with Iran. They didn't constrain him here. He's doing whatever the hell he wants to do.
Okay, so you guys just spoke for like 8 minutes doing a straw man. Okay, so you make it sound, and this is what's so harmful. You guys make it sound like I'm pro-Trump, and I think that MAGA is just a bunch of angels who are secretly left-wing, and they're going to magically agree with us on every issue. And the minute that Trump does something wrong, they're going to all push back 100%. And that's what I believed. I believed in rainbows and unicorns. Of course not, Crystal. Of course not. Well, you're trying to move them, moving the other.
I would love Crystal to ask this question: what does pushback from MAGA look like? What, like, the massive pushback that you're seeing from MAGA against Donald Trump in regard to Iran, what does that look like? Are we looking at like on paper condemnations, or like I sent out a tweet saying we probably shouldn't do this? Are we talking about like protests? Are we talking about like lobbying? Are we talking about like actual concrete politics?
Other side is super hard. And so when you see something, anything where they actually agree with us, you have to encourage that. So when you say all the things that you said, is Trump a bad guy? Of course, of course. So if you're listening out here, guys, the framing of all of this is totally wrong. Like, we're having a conversation. Oh, do you think Trump's a bad? Of course I think Trump's a bad guy. He's totally authoritarian. That's why I voted against him. That's why I worked so hard against him. So even the framing makes me like sound defensive when you guys started with a premise that's out in la la land. We totally oppose Trump. So now the second part of the premise that's totally wrong is, do I think that MAGA is going to revolt on every issue against Trump from day one? Why? Why would they? They love.
You know what the big problem with Cenk Uyger is too? I've only seen like 3 interviews, so it's possible that when he's on his own show, he's a lot more able to give like a positive claim. But it feels like whenever he's on these interviews, and it's partially the interviewer's fault too, because they kind of gish gallop him, where they give him like 5 claims to attack before he can even do anything. But Cenk is really good at telling you what he's not trying to do, but he's really bad at telling you what he is actually trying to do. Like when it comes to trying to like spur dissent amongst MAGA against Trump, what are you even trying to do? What does that look like? What does the pushback that you're trying to spur in MAGA look like? Because again, if it's like these tacit Twitter condemnations, then I'll fucking cash it in the bank where I like lose all of my fucking stocks. All right, like this is nothing. If that's the kind of pushback that you're talking about, then it's just pointless. I don't give a fuck about this kind of condemnation. It's the same thing with like the J6 conversations. Like you giving a fucking Twitter post about how Donald Trump was wrong on January 6th, but then casting your ballot for him anyway. That's not condemnation. That's not like you're not actually standing on what you believe in. You're just trying to appease people. And that's kind of what it feels like is that we're giving these tacit condemnations without actually having any political consequence for it. And if that's the kind of movement that Cenk Uyger is trying to spur in MAGA, then it's just a completely wholly and useless fucking movement to spur.
Trump. Of course not. That's not what you're looking for. You're looking for, is there 1 or 2 issues where there is actual agreement? And can we take that agreement and do something interesting to restrain Trump in those issues? So when you talk about immigration.
So when has that worked?
Okay, hold on. Well, we're in the middle of it right now. So I'll tell
we're
you
at war with Iran, Cenk. Hate to break it to you. We're at war with Iran. It didn't work.
Okay. So Crystal, let me finish. So when you talk about immigration and all the things that he's terrible on, I know what MAGA's movable on or not. I talk about it on the Young Turks all the time. If you think you're going to move them on immigration, you are nuts. They're not going to move an inch on immigration. So I fight him tooth and nail on that dungeon in El Salvador that they're sending people to, the Marines in the streets. Now, there's some issues like.
If you're worried about dangerous regimes with nuclear weapons, we are the primary concern under Trump. Anyways, forgive my spam. I mean, yeah, there's obviously like way more dangerous regimes with nuclear weapons than I'd imagine Iran would be. But I mean, yeah, potentially. The problem is that I can't really give any strong opinions on the war with Iran because I just don't know a lot about the history. I don't know the, reasons that Israel cited for doing it. I don't know the legitimacy of the nuclear bomb claims. I don't know the legitimacy of trying to stop them from having a nuclear bomb if that is what they were trying to build. I don't there's a billion things playing into this that I just don't know enough about. So I don't really want to make like a super hard condemnation or a super hard compliment to it. If you were to ask me with the knowledge that I have right now, I think it's kind of stupid. The Israel preemptively striking them and then trying to drag the US in, I think that's probably bad, but I don't know enough.
Immigration where they haven't moved an inch and they never will move an inch, right? Mm-hmm. There's some issues like the Marines in the streets where a smattering of them are like, this is a little uncomfortable. It feels a little unconstitutional. It doesn't feel quite right. Those libertarian wing, remember guys, this is super important. There's 77 million people that voted for Trump, right? If you treat them all the same, you will not be able to win elections. Why is winning elections important? Because that is how you take power away from Trump, away from the Republicans. So if you treat all 77 million as hardcore MAGA, you're going to push them away and they're going to vote against you. You can say, oh, no, but it makes me feel better. I have emotional release and my audience likes me more because I seem like I'm tougher on Trump. I was so mean to him. Yeah, but did that persuade anybody? I called all of his voters fascists. Yes, but did that persuade anyone? You're trying to persuade the people in the middle to come to your side. So what are the issues where we've got a fighter's chance? War. Okay, so now, do I think that on day one, they were all going to flip and then act and be successful in stopping all?
I think, to be clear, I think what Cenk is saying here is true. I think it is valuable to meet in the middle with MAGA. This is just the evidence of not evidence. This is just like how politics works. You have to meet in the middle and you have to compromise. This is arbitration. The problem is, and I think the problem that a lot of people have with Cenk's style of getting at it specifically, is it doesn't even necessarily feel like he's just trying to focus on the similarities that he has with the MAGA movement or trying to touch on the populist sentiments that they share. And it's more so that it feels like Cenk is kind of selling out a lot of his further right or further left beliefs and kind of selling out all of his anti-right beliefs to just focus on the areas of meet in the middle, and we're kind of ignoring provable realities because it's not politically advantageous to say. There's a difference between like political efficaciousness and like being as politically savvy and convincing as possible and lying, or lying by omission, or not being true to your actual beliefs. It kind of like whenever Cenk Uyger does this, it kind of reeks of ingenuineness, because it feels like he's actually selling out a lot of the beliefs that he had, especially in the first 4 years. Cenk Uyger was one of the most heated critics of Donald Trump, and now he's like kind of one of the I don't know if I feel comfortable calling him a dick sucker, but like you know, it feels like he's holding back a lot, and that's pretty bad for how uniquely bad the president has been. Ooh, there's something with chat. Give me 1 second. Hello? Okay. Yeah, that feels particularly bad with how uniquely bad this administration has been, and it feels like Cenk Uyger is not only just trying to be politically advantageous, but also selling out a lot of his core values, or kind of like nipping a lot of the things that he should be fighting for the sake of political advantageousness, especially when that political advantageousness isn't likely to be successful. There's an argument that you could make that we shouldn't even be really focusing on Republican voters that much, because they are kind of all stuck in that way. We should be focusing on the independent voters who happen to vote for Trump. But that's not the MAGA movement. It seems like Cenk is trying to appeal to the populist right MAGA movement instead of the independents, the old school Republicans that still have like liberal democratic, I know these people aren't necessarily liberals, but like those kind of schemes. But honestly, that's probably not even Cenk's place to do that, because nobody who has those allegiances, who are genuine, like in between moderates, nobody gives a fuck about. Like, those people don't give a fuck about what Cenk Uyger has to say. They don't give a fuck about like the anti-establishment populism thing that they're bullshitting about. Those are the kind of voters that we just need to mobilize for the Democratic Party, or the young left-wing voters. Like if Cenk Uyger was diverting his attention to his younger left-wing audience, which I'm pretty sure the Young Turks still have, and says, hey, you fuckers just need to go out and vote. All right, like fuck trying to appeal to this like right-wing MAGA crowd to get them to mobilize for Democrats. Like, that's ever gonna happen. Get the fucking young left-wingers that you all just isolated to actually just go out and vote. That would have been a much more effective way to mobilize voters. At least I'm pretty sure. It just feels like your priorities are wrong, and it feels like you're selling out a lot for this kind of misguided aim of political effectiveness that probably isn't going to manifest.
All of the establishment, all the neocons. And by the way, were we successful? We were not successful in stopping any of them during Biden or any other Democratic administration either, right? So now there's a giant full-blown revolt from MAGA against this war. Now, if you were saying, no, I don't see Tucker Carlson, Bannon, Marjorie Taylor Greene, Posobiec, Cernovich, Candace, etc., all of them opposed to the war, but you might not, because...
Yeah, I figured this was the problem. When he says full-blown MAGA revolt against this war, what he means is tweets. What he means is that a big conservative pundit came out and tweeted against it. That's what he means. This is not a full-blown MAGA revolt. This is not some big fraction in MAGA. This is just they disagree with going to war, and we haven't gone to war yet, and they'll probably end up acquiescing by the end of the war. That's probably the case. And like the idea that this big fucking attack coming from the populist right on Trump against the Iran war, it just doesn't exist. It's meaningless tweets. All the leftists are like, oh, I don't want to participate in the bourgeois elections, just don't understand the short-term consequences at their feet. Yeah, I mean, it feels like a pretty obvious solution. Like, hey, do you want to vote to save 3 poor people, or do you want to overthrow the system, which you're probably not going to be able to do to save all poor people? It's like, I'll probably vote to save 3. Because otherwise you're just not going to be able to do anything. Like, good luck to the communists who want to overthrow the U.S. government.
A lot of people watch programming that honestly just kind of gives them a misleading sense of what's happening.
Did you see Tucker, Trump saying, Tucker called me to apologize. He said he went too far. Did you see Steve Bannon saying, we're all
Wait, really? Did he say that? Even the fucking tacit condemnations, they're walking back. Holy, is that true?
Fall in line ultimately. So
Okay.
I'm not talking about, hold on.
Yeah.
I'm not talking about the however many million Americans voted for Trump, some of whom are hardcore MAGA, and you will never move them. And I guarantee you, the moment that Trump says, this is the policy, they're going to say, you're right, sir, this is the policy, this is brilliant, and I am on board. Are there independents that can are there independents that can be moved? Yes. There are two separate questions here, okay? Number one is we are in hell right now. Like, the level of damage that has been done to this country, done to the world from Trump 2.0 already is astounding. So the number one thing is triage, right? How do we
That's
stop?
what I'm doing.
How do we stop as much damage as we can? And the track record thus far in the Trump administration is the only time he has been constrained is through the left and liberals banding together and going through the court system and public pressure. That's it. That's all we've seen in this administration. The other question is how do you...
I don't understand why he's turning his head like that. Do you genuinely believe that there's been any amount of political change in Trump 2.0 that was driven by the right? Is there any amount of pushback that was driven by the populist right against Donald Trump 2.0? Can you give me one example of that? One example of the populist right banding together and changing a policy outcome from Donald Trump, or has it all been from the left who are raising public issue on this, who are forcing the president's hand, who are blowing up these big court rulings, who are holding it in their face, who are filing these lawsuits? These are all coming from the left. The idea that any of this is coming from the populist right is fucking insane, especially when, like I said, the only thing that I can remember that the right stood up on Trump against in any regard was the tariffs, and that was the establishment Republicans. Those weren't even the populist ones.
You win elections. So go ahead and address that, and we can talk about the election piece. But real quick, before you get in, as to the earnestness of this MAGA anti-war movement, put element number 3 up on the screen. Do you know? Tell me how many Republicans have signed on to the War Powers Resolution?
One.
Is Marjorie Taylor Greene? No. Is Lauren Boebert there? No. One, Thomas Massey, a libertarian who is, ideologically consistent, kind of similar ideologically to Dave Smith. Every other person here is a Democrat. So to the earnestness of this anti-war MAGA coalition and their commitment to blocking war with Iran, here is where the rubber meets the road. You have one
problem is, I think Cenk is just focused on the voters, like the voters have any political will in and of themselves. If the voters keep voting in establishment Republicans, it doesn't matter what the fuck they believe. They keep voting in establishment Republicans, and the establishment Republicans are going to do crazy, corrupt shit. What do you think you're doing? Like the vote, like the sentiments of the voters who end up voting for the same people anyway don't fucking matter at all. They have no political power outside of their vote because God knows that these people aren't going out to protest.
Republican who is already at odds with Trump, who is willing to put his name on this War Powers Resolution. That's it.
So, Crystal, look, I know you don't mean it, but you keep conflating two things. The Republican politicians, including Trump, and the Republican voters, or the people who voted for Trump, okay? So are the Republican...
So please ask, one, what does the great MAGA pushback look like that we're seeing right now? Is it all tweets? And then two, what power does the voter have outside of electing politicians, and have these voters elected anybody but us deep establishment Republicans?
Politicians corrupt.
I remember why these videos fire me up so much.
Of course they're corrupt. Are they going to say, hey, Israel, I'll be your bitch and I'll do whatever the hell you want me to do? Of course they are. They're completely owned by Israel, okay? So AIPAC, et cetera, the warmongers, by the way, let's be honest, is more than half the Democratic Party totally owned by AIPAC? Yes, right? So I know, oh my God, oh no, you can't be honest. You have to just say the other side is terrible and our side is angels. No, I'm not going to play that.
Would you rather be on the side of the 37 who signed on to the War Powers Resolution,
Crystal,
or the
I am on the side of the 37.
True.
Everything you frame
the
is
both sidesing, like, oh yeah, the Democrats are just as much warmongers. She just showed this. Yeah, she just showed the chart where 37 Democrats just signed on to this. One Republican. That's super clear. Now to be clear, I'm not a big Democrat show any either. Like, I think that there's problems within the party, but I don't understand why you wouldn't be more, if you want the Democrats to win, focus on the Democrats that don't vote, focus on the people who in the middle who didn't vote, focus on the absolute outside of Republican voters if you really want to. But the idea of appealing to this homegrown MAGA populist right movement is just so mind-bendingly misguided. And the idea that like you've been vindicated because they sent out a tweet to disagree with the Iran war. Thank God. That one tweet from Candace Owens, that's going to end the war.
Man, I am on the side of the 37. In fact, Ro Khanna is my top ally. Bernie Sanders, Ro Khanna and I had the same exact strategy that you criticized in November when we talked.
That's not true.
You literally put me, no, and Kyle did the same thing. You guys put me in the same bucket as Bernie and Ro, reaching out to see if we can find agreement on the right.
What else has Bernie done? What else has Bernie done that has been profoundly impactful? The anti-oligarch, the Fight Oligarchy tour, which was an effort to bind together the left and the liberals to protest and to resist this administration. And that has been profoundly more impactful.
I'm having a conversation with a person who isn't here.
Did the Pentagon budget get cut? Just tell me that. What's the Pentagon budget? Did it get cut?
You've now asked me 28 questions.
Did Don Jr., did he do whatever with the generals? Did that work out?
All right, guys, look, I came on here because, look, you're generally fair. So you asked me 28 questions, and then let me answer them. So, and stop framing it as if I'm a different person. You keep making all these assumptions about who I, oh, are you on the Republican side or the Democrat?
I'm literally citing things that you said, Cenk. Like, I played your clip of what you said.
Christ,
turn to the camera.
Okay,
hey, tell me if I'm wrong.
Crystal, I'm right here. I'm right here. Can I talk for myself instead of you?
You
like,
specifically held on the Pentagon budget.
At this point, borderline lying about me in every framing of every question. Can I actually be a human being named Cenk actually answer your questions instead of you framing me as a person that doesn't exist?
Cenk,
okay?
I played the clip of you talking, so tell me how I'm lying.
Okay. All right. So now, of all your questions, you have this fantasy land that Trump was like, oh, the left thinks Abrego Garcia's I've treated him wrong. I surrender, left. Are you, come on, what planet do you live on? No, the courts are not left or right. The courts have held.
Okay. Who do you think brings these petitions to the court? The ACLU? What? Who do you think brings these petitions to the court? Okay. Do you think, are you seriously going to say that the left protesting isn't valuable? Is that what you're going to say? I don't know. Like the idea that bringing attention from the left to the Abrego Garcia case or to the alien enemies or to the tariffs or to any of these issues are just like meaningless actions. Like, oh no, Trump was so scared of leftist protests, but the one Candace Owens tweet saying that maybe we shouldn't be going into war with Iran is going to somehow reverse his whole foreign policy. Like, this is ridiculous.
I'm thrilled that the courts have held. And it was so important for the courts to hold. So if they didn't hold on that, he was going to have unlimited authoritarian power. And we are against that, no matter how many times people try to pretend that we're on the side of Trump. Listen to what I am actually saying. And you will see this every day on the Young Turks. I am against Trump. Totally. Okay. Now, okay. Yes, but why do you love Trump will be the next question. Okay.
Did I ask that? Cenk,
okay.
talk about a straw man. I mean, you're making up stuff I never said. Come
What's
on.
the point of coming on here if I can't answer your questions?
I'm giving you plenty of time to answer, brother. You're making up stuff about me. I didn't say that.
Okay,
so you want to talk about straw men? You're inventing things on the spot.
You guys, it's a mistake. So okay, now when you're talking about the Pentagon cuts.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think that I thought, oh my God, Elon's such a good guy and Trump's such a good guy, even though I've spoken out against them at every single turn. And then I magically thought, oh, I bet they become liberals overnight, progressives overnight.
Didn't you say that Trump and we'll see what Trump and Elon do to the Pentagon? And now Elon's out of office? We can unequivocally say Elon did nothing to the Pentagon. Does he not know Elon left? He literally said, we'll see what Trump and Elon do. It's nothing. It's absolutely nothing. We've gotten a House budget proposal. Didn't it increase military spending? Oh my God,
Right.
kill me.
No, you put out the Pentagon thing so that they're stuck either way. That's why Bernie and Roe joined me. Because either they cut the Pentagon, we go, yes, mission accomplished. We got a tiny, tiny amount accomplished during a Trump reign, which seemed impossible. Or they don't cut the Pentagon and they add to it. And then we all come out, as I did and Bernie and Roe did, and go, see, we told you. They're hypocrites.
How did that go, buddy? How did your see I told you moment go? Did it change anybody? Did you persuade anybody by saying, hey, we'll see if they cut the Pentagon? Oh, they didn't cut the Pentagon. How do you guys feel about Trump now? Oh, well, he's deporting all the illegals, so we still support him. Like, how did that fucking go for you, buddy?
The leaders of your party never intended to cut the Pentagon. MAGA, they were lying to you. Now,
does MAGA care, Cenk? Did that work? Did MAGA
yes,
care?
they do care.
No, they don't.
No, okay, Crystal.
I've seen zero pushback on the Pentagon budget. Let me just say,
Yes.
because I let you go on for a little while.
Oh, I know.
There
God
were
forbid I
two.
got to
No,
answer one or
there
two
were
questions. Go
two.
ahead.
There were two tactics that were
He
floated.
is right though. She is absolutely, like, not to be a debate bro, she's absolutely gish-gallicating him. She asks him like 5 questions and then cuts him off after he answers the first. I mean, like, yeah, that is kind of shitty, but like, you know.
By me and by you in our conversation. Okay, you said, I think it's great that Elon's responding to me, Don Jr.'s responding to me. Like, we have more of a chance. No, you said we have more of a chance with these guys to cut the Pentagon budget than we don't. And I said, nothing good's going to come out of this. And so the important thing to do is to resist the project outright, because we don't want a bunch of the richest man on the planet running our government. And so we saw how this played out.
Yeah,
the Pentagon, hold on. The Pentagon did not get cut. And actually what happened is all of the liberal and left organizing against Tesla, against the Wisconsin Supreme Court race, against Elon directly, tanked his popularity to the point that Trump felt he was a political liability and the whole project had to be scrapped. So the tactic...
That's not true. Doge is still happening. Elon fulfilled his whole term that he was appointed to through the executive order. He fulfilled his whole thing. I think he may have left like a month early maybe, but he fulfilled more or less the whole thing. The idea that Elon left because it was wildly unpopular, that's not true. But I mean, it is absolutely true that we wouldn't have seen the fucking Twitter meltdown from Elon Musk if it wasn't for pressure from the left. We wouldn't have seen like one of the biggest meltdowns between two of the biggest political allies without pressure from the political left. And she is right in the sense that, like, whether or not it was because like it was politically advantageous or whether or not it was just a timeline expiring, we saw nothing from Elon Musk that Doge would like. That Cenk would like. We saw no cuts to the Pentagon. We saw no. I don't even think we saw an audit of the military from Doge. All we saw was cuts to Social Security. All we saw were cuts to U.S. aid, which I don't even know if the populist people on this panel like anyway. But like, all we saw is like these meaningless cuts and like ideology driven cuts. We saw nothing with the Pentagon. That's accurate. That's true. And Cenk, I don't know if he's dodging or if he's just not being given the time to answer that question, but not only did we see absolutely no cuts, but we also saw no pushback after no cuts came. We didn't see any groundswell. We didn't even see a couple tweets like the fucking groundswell that he's pointing out with Iraq. We didn't even see Iran. We didn't even see that from MAGA.
Let's work with them and try to cut the Pentagon budget failed. The tactic of let's resist this project outright and make the case and make Elon himself politically toxic succeeded.
So, Crystal, we do live in two different worlds. It's fascinating to see. It's amazing to see. So, number one, the project of saying cut the Pentagon worked. Why did it work? Because they cut the Pentagon, they magically became progressives overnight? No. It worked because it showed and highlighted their hypocrisy, that they weren't going to cut the
Did we have trouble highlighting hypocrisy from the Trump administration? Is that something we had trouble illustrating? Thank God we found the one time we finally caught MAGA after 8 years. We finally caught them being hypocritical. Shut the fuck up. Come on.
The Pentagon. And now I get it, guys. Especially if you're in the audience, you're not seeing it. I get it. And I'm not saying that as an insult. You're not seeing it.
So
because
you
you're
won
not
because the Pentagon budget went up, even though you thought that the Pentagon budget was
Yes.
Can I finish?
Correct.
Okay. So the reason you're not seeing it is because you're not engaging with MAGA, and that's okay. And you don't want to engage
Cenk,
with MAGA. I got it.
Do you know who I am? Do you know the show I host?
I don't know if you know who you are.
Who are you talking to right now?
Okay,
I host a show with Sagar and Jetty and Emily Jasinski every day.
So Crystal,
no one in this room talks more to MAGA than I do.
I'm not sure I understand Cenk's tactics. He's working with the elites in the GOP space, and that reaffirms our weakness to the MAGA base. The operatives will play him. The voters are a different project. I'm not even sure if Cenk understands his own tactics at this point. Like, yeah, my whole goal all along was either to appeal to MAGA or to highlight the hypocrisy of the Trump administration. Like, that needed to be done. Like, there isn't like fucking 5 billion. Like, they'll hang themselves with their own rope with their hypocrisy. They literally, with the tariffs alone, they were like, oh yeah, it's going to onshore domestic manufacturing and we're going to negotiate new trade deals to have better deals for overshores manufacturing. It took them proposing a fucking policy to show they're hypocritical. You didn't need to do this like fucking ridiculous kiss-up campaign in order to show their hypocrisy to the voters. There's a billion different cases that Cenk could have pointed to without this pandering that could have illustrated the hypocrisy arguably better.
Okay?
Yeah, okay, but
Point to the war with Iran. It happened. It happened and you didn't need it.
okay, so are you
Cenk has the daddest FaceTime angle ever. True.
saying that none of the MAGA voters were thrilled that they added to the Pentagon? Is that what
They
you're
don't
saying?
give a shit
I'm
because
saying
Trump did it.
Elon and
Yeah,
Trump.
no, you guys were wrong.
Elon
They
and
didn't
Trump
like
and
that at
Don
all.
Jr. Cenk lied to you from the beginning when they
course
pretended
they
like there
did.
was even a 1% chance.
Where's the pushback, Cenk? Where's the protests? Where's the protest from the populist right? Where's any political activity from the populist right against Trump? Please show me one. Show me one that isn't a tweet. Please.
So when people told you at the time, though, resist them outright and point out that they're frauds.
Okay,
Don't
so
pretend like
this
maybe
is
they'll
so
cut it.
stupid.
That was kind of the point.
You guys have a totally ridiculous, All right, let me not be insulting. We disagree on strategy, okay?
Definitely,
so,
yes.
Okay, yeah. This whole idea that you're making a difference because Donald Trump is listening to the left, I can't believe you guys think that. That sounds totally detached from reality.
I'll make that case in a minute.
Why is Elon Musk out? Because people burn Tesla cars? I mean, Crystal, you said that in the intro. Are you serious? No, Elon's out because his policies were always deeply unpopular. No one wanted those cuts.
No.
Yeah,
These people don't even... Elon wasn't forced out. Oh my god, my glasses fell off. Elon wasn't pushed back. Elon wasn't pushed out because of unpopularity. He just wasn't. Most pushback you got was on retaliatory tariffs. That's all. Other than that, nope. And even the pushback that we got on the tariffs were from establishment Republicans. They weren't even from the populists.
Pressed that case.
And they're in La La Land.
Cenk, and who pressed that case?
The
It was
left
the
and
left and
liberals
liberals.
in the street.
Joe Rogan hosted him on his podcast to pump him up.
Guys,
Joe Rogan,
guys,
think
you're
about,
doing
but Cenk, think
You're
about
doing
this.
this
Think about this.
unbelievable straw man.
No.
Hold on, can I just...
Let me just finish my thought here, okay? Rogan hosted Zuckerberg and Andreessen to attack the
Of course he
CFPB.
did. Of course he did.
To gut and
You think
attack the
he's gonna be a Bernie
CFPB.
Sanders progressive overnight?
No,
Are
but
you
it's-
insane? No, guys.
Are you
have this
insane?
straw
You were the
man
one who apparently thought
I
that.
said,
Cenk,
no, but
There was some pushback from the agricultural sector where it forced him to pull back ice from farms. Even if I grant that, I'm pretty sure farmers are generally left-wing anyway. But even if I grant that, look where it got you. I mean, he had one moment of weakness and then he immediately coalesced. He immediately went back to deporting them all. So that, like, even this, like, the strongest example that you could find of MAGA pushback, groundswell, didn't do anything.
if anything is
Crystal,
going
do
to be
you really think
populist,
that I
hold
thought that it-
on, Cenk. Let me finish a thought. If anything, if the populist right stands for anything, you would think it would be an anti-scam bureau that is wildly effective. But no, and actually stood up against debanking conservatives. But no, what did Rogan do, and what did they cheer for with Elon with the chainsaw? Completely gutting not only the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, Trump gutting the National Labor Relations Board, but them defenestrating the ability of this government to enforce white-collar crime at all. Did MAGA care? No, they didn't. The only people that held them to account were left and liberals who organized against that, and yes, successfully made Elon so toxic that he ultimately crashed out of the administration.
No,
that's what happened.
That's okay.
So,
oh, I forgot to point out. Yeah, they don't even know. Elon's timeline just expired. He wasn't forced out because he was unpopular. His timeline just expired. And it wasn't. It sure as fuck wasn't the populist right pushing Elon out. God save me. I forgot. Time heals all wounds. I was coming back. I was like, maybe Cenk has some points. Maybe I've grown more amenable to him. Nope. Nope.
let me try explaining it this way and see if I can get through to you guys. So
what pushed Elon out is his bottom line. No, what pushed Elon out is that he was only going to be a part of Doge for a certain timeline, and the timeline ran out. That's what pushed Elon out, is that he was on a timeline and he reached the end of the timeline, so he's gone. That's all that pushed him out.
Oh, you keep telling me all the things that Trump did wrong. Of course he did. So I'm saying that it's a given that he's always going to do, for example, 90% of things.
That may have been, if you're saying maybe that's what just pushed him out of Trump's good graces, or that's why he got pushed out of politics in general, maybe. But what pushed him out of the administration was just a timeline.
Massively wrong. And in the other 10% that he plans to do wrong, I'm saying we have a fighter's chance if we ally and we show hypocrisy, or we get allies. It's a win-win either way.
You showed hypocrisy on the defense, on the Pentagon spending. Where did that get you, baby boy? Nowhere. You're showing hypocrisy is fucking meaningless. It does nothing, because MAGA is just going to show their own hypocrisy anyway. We have all of the ammo that we need to show that MAGA is hypocritical. I don't think that was anybody's concern.
Okay, so for example, in opposing the war, either they become our allies and somehow at some point we stop this war, or we show, oh, you guys never meant it. Now you're the pro-war party, which makes us much more likely to win over independence and win the next election. But as I say that, you keep framing it as if I agree with them 90%, and where I think that I'm going to flip them overnight on the 90% where we disagree. No, there's no chance of that. So you can stop asking that question. They're not going to move on cutting the budget.
Show where they flipped anything in any regard. Show where they flipped on anything and they actually exercised any political power at all. Show any success of this. Anything. Have you pushed Trump to change policy on anything? Have you pushed any concession, any meaningful concession from a right-wing populist that wasn't a tweet? Have you inspired any protests? Have you inspired any like actual groundswell of defections against Donald Trump? I'm pretty sure most of the defections came from left-wing protests in regard to the deportations, or the tariffs, which Donald Trump just did to himself, the stock market crash. Can you show anything for your work? Anything at all? Is there like a big groundswell of right-wing populists leaving MAGA? The answer is no. It doesn't exist.
Budget, and they're not going to listen that, hey, you know what, you shouldn't cut the malaria treatment in Africa, you shouldn't cut the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, because every dollar we spend there, we get back $20, etc. But if you go with your maximalist approach, guys, and you say, all right, I'm fighting you in a maximum way, so that means I'm never going to agree with you, I'm going to insult you at every turn, I'm not going to listen to you. So when you come in and you go, hey, guys, let's ally against the war, or maybe did you think that Elon's and I said this in every right-wing talk show that I did, and I said it at the Charlie Kirk event, I said, remember, beware of your own donors like Elon Musk. And then eventually they got aware of their own donors. Now, did they do it?
There are no concessions. If you want concessions from the right, you need to be one of the donors. The people who fell for Trump's populism hold little sway. I agree. That's why appealing to these people is so fucking stupid.
Magically and overnight? No, it was mainly a fight between Elon and Trump, right?
Yes,
it was their
of
egos.
course. It had nothing to do with Charlie Kirk.
The reason they are unpopular is not because the left's maximalist approach of yelling fascist at every Trump voter is working. It's because their policies are deeply unpopular.
And who explains that their policies are deeply unpopular? The left and liberals are the ones that highlight how deeply unpopular those policies are. So that's where the credit belongs.
Like I do. So
right, but that's not like Joe Rogan does, right? Joe Rogan doesn't do that. Charlie Kirk doesn't do that. They don't do that.
I just said how unpopular they are.
Correct.
Yes, but my point is, Joe Rogan and Charlie Kirk don't.
I love you, Kyle Kulinski. I love you so much. Oh my God, this is my goat.
Don't do that, Cenk. They're not allies. Joe Rogan and Charlie Kirk don't do that. Steve Bannon doesn't do that. Sloppy Steve goes and gives Trump a hand job every day. That's the point, is that they're not allies. And by the way, even on the Iran war thing, they're lying. They are lying. We literally have the quotes right here. Charlie Kirk is already backpedaling. Quote, we must trust Trump in this situation. Steve Bannon, if Trump ultimately decides to bomb Iran's nuclear sites, MAGA would come around. That's not me speaking, that's Steve Bannon. The vast majority of the MAGA movement will go, look, we trust your judgment. We don't like it. In fact, we may hate it, but we'll get on board. Tucker Carlson called Trump and apologized, and he also said on his podcast with Steve Bannon, quote, I like Israel. I don't talk about Gaza because my audience got mad at me. He said, quote, watching Donald Trump, who at his core is sincere about peace, I feel for President Trump, and he just has to roll with it. That is not true. What he's saying is not true. These are not allies. They will immediately start moving the goalposts as soon as Trump starts bombing Iran. You're going to get this. You're going to get, oh, he's getting bad advice from the neocons around him. It's not a big deal. It's a limited attack. It's defensive. It's not offensive. This isn't like Iraq. There are no boots on the ground. The only people who are sincere that I will grant you, Cenk, is libertarians. So Thomas Massey and Dave Smith, because libertarians have a track record like Ron Paul did of being very principled. But everybody in MAGA, or 99% of them, will bend the knee. Just like 99% of the ones in Congress have already bent the knee. Even Marjorie Taylor Greene, who's saying things that are against the war, she's ultimately not signing onto the bill to block the war.
Oh, I love Kyle so much. I can't explain the catharsis. Oh my God. Thank you. Crystal didn't bring up any of that. Oh my God. Thank you, Kyle, for bringing up that they are not going to do a fucking thing. And the lip service is nothing at all. Oh, okay. We just need to take a break. Libertarians are as important as Dump. I talked last week though, so it doesn't mean much. Yeah, because a lot of libertarians are also anti-electoralism. What the problem is that the only like principled populist people are probably going to be libertarians.
Okay, so here we go again. So again, 90-10, guys. the framing of that question makes it sound like I think Steve Bannon and Tucker Carlson have good intent, and my God, they're ready to rebel on everything against Donald Trump.
I said Iran.
No,
I said
hold
Iran.
on. Can I just answer a question?
But I didn't say that. I said Iran.
Okay. Yeah, that's okay. So
Thank you. And Crystal, I'm not being, listen, the thing that I love about Kyle and the thing that I really don't like about Crystal, Kyle's not really a gish galloper. He makes a point very clear and he holds people to that point. He is not, it will just interrupt you if you're mischaracterizing the point that he's trying to make. And that's what you need to do with Cenk. And I love Kyle Kulinski. I love Kyle Kulinski for what he's doing.
So I think that obviously 90% of the influencers, the hosts, etc., are going to stick with Trump 100%, right? Well, I wouldn't even say 90%. I'd say, 75% or so. Are they going to kiss his ass on everything? Well, of course they are. They're on the right, and their whole ecosystem is based on kissing politicians and leaders' asses. Now, let's be honest, not us and not you guys, but MSNBC and now a lot of online hosts on the left, their job is to kiss the Democratic ass, and they say, oh yeah, Joe Biden was young and dynamic, etc. So yes, we have the partisans, and they are, by definition, always going to stick with one side is great, the other side is the devil, okay? So now when you get to the 25% of hosts, because now the reason I moved it from 10 to 25, because you're including Rogan, etc. So is Rogan the same as Steve Bannon? If you think he is, that's just totally wrong. Now, do they agree on a lot of things? Yes. Do they agree on everything? No. Does Steve Bannon right about most things? No, he's horribly, horribly wrong about most things. So will they, when Trump says heal, will they heal? In the beginning, yes, and that's exactly what you're seeing. But the reason they're having to heal is because they started rebelling in the first place. And Trump got mad, and everybody else got mad. And even today, you just go on any website.
Rebelling. Why are we using such military terms to describe I sent a tweet? Why are we using such military terms when we're describing maybe we shouldn't invade Iran? Cenk is in denial that today's right wing is a cult of personality and he can go shoes on I assume this means shows and try and find common ground with people there, but in essence there is little he can do that Trump can say to nullify, or there's little he can do that Trump can say to nullify all his efforts in one tweet because they will not disagree with Trump on anything ever. Probably true. Hit the viability of the whole MAGA movement. Don't cozy up to it and make it work. Okay, yeah, I agree.
So Bannon is saying, don't go to war. It's terrible. Is he then saying, oh, Donald Trump? Of course he is, because he's on that side. And did we see a lot of left-leaning hosts?
So, okay, I hope Kyle asked this. Do we genuinely think there's going to be a defection from Steve Bannon? Do we think that Steve Bannon is going to hold Trump to account on the war in Iran? Please tell me that he thinks Steve Bannon has a shot of defecting. Please.
Go, oh, well, Joe Biden and Kamala Harris are corporate guys and they're bad, but we have to go with them anyway. Yes, we did. But look, you have to be honest about what's actually happening. So if you guys are saying, and I'm not trying to strawman you guys like you did, in my opinion, in the framing of every question. So I'm asking you, you're saying it's all fake and you think that all these right-wing hosts are not actually anti-war, but they've been telling their audience now for months that the war is a terrible, let me ask the question, and that the war is a terrible, terrible, terrible idea, and how would that strategy work? So they get their audience totally against the war, then they capitulate to Trump.
Let me tell you how that strategy works.
They're not getting their audience to be anti-war. They're getting their audience to be brainwashed for Trump. And being anti-war was the way to get Trump elected. Because the Democrats were supporting Ukraine and Russia, no World War III. Now that we're going to war with Iran, we're justified in doing it. The Democrats weren't. And now we're not anti-war, we're pro-Trump. It's pretty simple. Some of them are principled true believers in isolationism, but the majority of them are cynical opportunists with zero principles. Yeah, sure. A lot of them are also just going to be stupid. Like, it's stupid and impressionable. Like, I think Joe Rogan may view himself as anti-war, and he may view himself as genuine too, but he's also genuinely very impressionable by anybody that comes on his show, and now he's cuddled up to all of the right-wing people so much that he's going to bring right-wingers on his show, and he's going to coalesce to their opinions ultimately. The idea that we're going to see a big defection from the right, from people like Joe Rogan, from people like Steve Bannon, from people like, I guess Candace Owens did, but I mean, it was we can all agree that she's grifting and that she's grifting towards the far right. So that's not an ally gained. the idea that we're going to see all of these people shifting away from MAGA, like this huge populist right shift, is just not true and not borne out in anything. I just wish they'd ask him for an example of like, hey, has this succeeded in any regard at all beyond a tweet sent by a fucking podcaster?
That helped them be
Let me see how. Let me explain how.
My
that
answer to your question
works.
is yes. By the way, in 99% of cases, they are just lying, and they'll go and suck Trump off
you're
again.
wrong.
So let me.
That's a real disagreement. That's a real
They're already backing off, and the war didn't even start yet.
Let me explain
They're already backing off.
how the strategy.
Oh, I love Kyle. Thank you. They're already backing off, and the war didn't even start yet. Yes, true. We're talking about pressure against a potential idea of Trump's that he's not even owning yet. All right? Imagine when Trump owns it. Imagine when Trump is arguing for it. Do you think these people are going to take a principled stance against Donald Trump when the whole party is formed around sucking him off? Absolutely not.
Strategy works. Okay. They postured as anti-war because they thought it was a good electoral strategy. So now they have some track record laid of claiming that Trump is the pro-peace candidate, blah, blah, blah.
And why was it a good strategy?
And
because their voters are anti-war.
Okay, we'll come back to that. Okay, the polling is wildly at odds with you, Cenk, on that. We can come back to that in a second. But okay, so they this is the pro-peace ticket, whatever. And I think there were a lot of independents actually who were swayed by that.
It was dissuaded immediately. Like the fact that we're talking about the war with Iran and we're not still talking about the 51st state comment or retaking the Panama Canal. Like, or the fucking invasion of Greenland, which I need to check this. I'm pretty sure we had actual fucking attack plans written up for Greenland. The fact that we're not talking about these three conflicts that Donald Trump were floating immediately coming into the White House, but we're talking about his fourth because we actually might do something about it. The idea that this is the anti-war ticket in MAGA is so principled in fighting against war when it took the fourth fucking threat of invading, one of which is our allies, the fourth threat of invading to actually get a fucking tacit Twitter condemnation. This is ridiculous.
That anti-war message, which was completely at odds with reality and with Trump's first term. I think we all agree with that, okay? So I think there were independent voters who were swayed by that. Charlie Kirk and others, now, to maintain some credibility, they have to postulate, oh, you know, Trump is getting pulled into this and the neocons are tricking him and confusing him, etc.
His fault.
But we already know.
I'm pretty sure both. I'm pretty sure both of the videos I watched of Cenk doing this fucking MAGA grift, I stopped watching early. I'm trying so hard to get through this whole video. Well, those written up plans by the military don't mean much because the military has written up plans for a zombie outbreak. These are contingency documents that don't really have a true effect. I agree that they don't really have a true effect, but I might be wrong. Like, is there contingency plans to invade Canada? Is that something that exists? Like, is there contingency? Like, why would you write up military contingency plans based off of like a one-off Twitter joke like they're trying to frame it?
How this plays out, because it's already played out. Trump called Tucker kooky and said he needs to get a TV network, basically saying he's a has-been. Tucker called him to apologize. That was a message not just to Tucker, but to everybody else. Time to bend the knee, time to get on board. And they did. They did. Yeah. So we don't have to guess. It's already happened. It's already played out. Right, they've already bent the knee.
Okay, so we're now actually approaching an actual disagreement rather than the one that was foisted upon me that I don't like. So all right, so guys, you think that all of these guys and their voters are all liars and that they're not actually?
I don't know why you lump in the voters because
I'm talking about the voters.
Okay, well,
voters have no political power. The voters' opinions don't matter if they don't exercise the power in a way that represents their beliefs. If I believe that we should have universal health care, and then I vote in somebody who consistently signals against universal health care, and those are the people that I exclusively vote in. It doesn't matter if I'm pro universal health care, okay? If I keep voting in the fucking people, it's the meme of like, oh damn it, I fell for it again. This is all MAGA voters do. I don't care what the fuck MAGA voters think because we might agree on certain policy positions. It matters that they keep voting in the people who are directly against their policy positions. We have to figure out why that's the case. We don't have to psychoanalyze where the voters are. We need to psychoanalyze why the fuck they keep voting for people who keep falling for the populist con of these fucking grifters. That's the problem. But that's a really tall task, so we should probably just be focusing on the far leftist trying to get them to vote and the independents. That's the answer. More so the independents, but...
Talk about the voters then. Let me ask you a really simple question. Let me
and
ask you a
making
really
it seem
simple
like,
question about the voters.
well, you of course, you like the
Which-
Trump and the Republicans,
Which
but you
part?
trusted
That's
them.
not
No, I
what
don't.
I said.
Stop
Which,
saying it.
Cenk,
You said
let me
during the
ask a really
actual
basic
37
question.
to 1 vote. You said how many Republicans voted for
one.
the war powers? I said one, Tom Massey, and you kept going like, oh, did you know that they didn't? I said, yeah. I said, I answered
because
it
they're
from the
fake.
get-go. So
But
yes,
Cenk,
there are voters.
let me ask
are
you this
saying
question.
that their voters are not anti-war at all?
Excuse me, 2 sovereign territories, Canada and Greenland. Don't forget Panama, all right? Don't forget that we're talking about taking the Panama Canal back over, all right? That's okay.
So be clear.
So let me ask you this question. Let me ask you this question. Let me ask you this question.
Are you saying they're actually liars?
Let me ask you this question. Which base, the Democratic Party base or the Republican Party base, which one do you think is more opposed right now to war with Iran? Which one?
The left. It's not even close.
It's not even close. Exactly. That's the point. And so
No,
if
you're
you are
missing
going
my
to
point,
build,
Crystal. You're not
if you're going to
listening.
build a grassroots people-powered movement with bodies in the streets to oppose war, where do you need to go for those numbers? The left,
Okay.
because they're already there with you. And by the way, the MAGA base, the minute that Trump says we're in a war with Iran, they are going to overwhelmingly back him
Well, give
because
the
they
numbers
have
already.
every
You
single
have the
time.
numbers already.
not.
So
Yeah,
give-
so put up 8. This is element 8, I believe, for us. These are the poll numbers. Now, there are other polls out there, I grant you, but this is among Trump 2024 voters. You ask them, do you support or oppose the U.S. providing offensive weapons to help Israel strike Iranian military targets? What we're doing now, 79% support. Do you support or oppose the U.S. taking its own direct military action, if necessary, to prevent Iran from developing nuclear weapons? That's exactly the framing that Trump is using right now. Support 72%. They are more pro-war. So are there some who, don't want to get in another foreign entanglement? Sure. But overwhelmingly, are they going to back an Iran war? Are they already backing an Iran war because Trump said so? 100%.
I do think there's a big problem with this conversation where they are talking past each other. Absolutely. Crystal is talking as if I don't even know what argument she's talking or she's arguing against right now. I guess the viability, but like just because they're pro-war right now doesn't mean they're not movable. Is what Cenk would say, but Cenk's policy is also like fucking idiotic. To the right, it's less about policy outcome and more about how the gov makes them feel. This is nationalism in grouping works. If Trump starts a war of conquest, they'll feel elevated and powerful. Yeah, that is also probably true. There is a strong nationalism a strong nationalist bend when it comes to Trump voters.
Okay, so let's establish.
But the point that I'll make is like these two are making completely separate arguments. Kyle is actually the only one that I think directly was engaging with what Cenk was saying, but he only got like one opportunity to say anything.
Who we're talking about. So when you talk about Trump and the Republican politicians, 99% of them are liars. They're going to be pro-war. They're going to do all the terrible things that we're against, that we are all against, including me. Okay. Now, when you move to the media, I'm out on a limb, and I get it. If you grant them an inch, people will say, okay, that's it. You love them, and you're a Trump supporter, et cetera. But I'm doing it anyway because I'm being honest. I think 75% of them are unreachable, but 25% of them, at a minimum, actually will listen to you, have their own audience pushing them to be anti-war. They're not with us on all issues. They're not with us on most issues. But on war, I think that a significant chunk of them are with us. Okay, so when you go to Charlie Kirk's audience, for example, why is Charlie Kirk even dipping his toe into the waters of opposing Trump's policy on Iran and then quickly rushing back out? The quickly rushing back out is obvious. They're ass kissers, right? So the question is, why did he dip his toe in the first place? Because he did a poll of his own audience, and his audience said 90-10 do not help Israel go to war with Iran. 90-10. That's his audience, okay? So now you move to the last category, which are the voters themselves. That is where I am most hopeful that they actually are.
Okay, and now, do we have anything showing that these voters and that these viewers are actually doing anything to push these content creators? Like, to push the national dialogue, to do anything? Any protests? Even a lot of speech? Like, even if you could show me a lot of anti-war tweets from right-wing populists, even that would probably satisfy. But can you show any pressure from the right-wing populists at all? The answer is no.
Are anti-war. Now, does that mean 100% of them are anti-war? No, not at all, okay? But I think a solid...
And also, again, the conflict hasn't started, okay? The idea of possibly entering into a conflict is very different than opposing the conflict. I don't know why we have to keep making that hyper clear, but that's absolutely true.
50% of Trump voters, a lot of them are independents, or a lot of them are somewhere in the spectrum. At least 50% of them are actually anti-war. So what I'm seeing is all over social media, all over the right-wing shows, their own base in an uprising. Why do you think Charlie Kirk, Tucker, and Bannon are doing those things? They're almost all of them are saying on their own shows, well, you guys are pushing me to do this, and yeah, I hear you guys. We're supposed to be anti-war, right? Now, they're gonna, guys, since this is like the first 6 months, are they gonna go run back to daddy? Of course they're gonna run back to daddy, right? So what we're trying to do is not turn all of them against all of Trump's policies instantly, because that is wildly unrealistic. You are trying to either flip them or show hypocrisy to the voters that you can reach on the issues where they agree with us. There aren't that many, but war is one of them with half of his base. So you guys think that if the left wing does a maximalist approach and we yell at those people, that those voters are going to interpret it as, oh my God, they were right. Since they're yelling at me, I will now go to their side. My strategy is go on those shows to talk to their audience and say, look, I'm not trying to trick you. I think you guys actually, a lot of you are actually anti-war, and I'm anti-war. And guys, you'd be surprised that they don't think the left is anti-war at all. They would have the same exact conversation in reverse. They would ask incredulously, who do you think is more anti-war, left or right? And they would all say right, and that the left is more pro-war. And I'm like, no, guys, no, we're totally anti-war. So Dave Smith and I did a coalition. Dave Smith did a great job on your show, Breaking Points. Fantastic. I agree with you. Libertarians are the first to peel off. And great, look, we peeled off the libertarians on the issue of war. Perfect. And we're doing a website, unitedagainstwar.com, where I'm inviting allies. And if it turns out
you didn't peel the libertarians off of the war. The libertarians were going to come off anyway, buddy. I don't know if I'd count that as a point for you, but
only the libertarians come and the right wing does not come, okay, then that's what happened. So now, if you're saying that no revolt happened at all, it was all fake, all the media guys were fake, 100% of them, and all the voters were fake, 100% of them, and they all actually love war, okay, that's a straw man. I don't think you're saying that. But you got to tell me what you are saying. Are you saying that none of their voters are anti-war, or a big chunk, or a small chunk, and that if we yell at them, they'll become more anti-war, or if we reach out and say, hey, let's form an anti-war alliance, they'll be more anti-war?
So I'll tell you what I'm saying. I think that once Trump starts bombing Iran, those numbers we just showed you are correct. So like 70 to 80% of the Republican base will be in favor of it. That's what I'm saying about it. But I want to ask you, when Trump does bomb Iran, do you think the number among Republicans will stay at only 50% supporting it, or is it going to go up to 70 or 80%? Hey guys, this is just a little piece of an hour-long.
That's so fucked up to cut off at one of the only good questions you guys asked. Fuck me. Okay. Oh, that was terrible. That was just terrible.